This is a sports catastrophe production.
Hey there, Heather Holler, Chef CUtastrophe. Welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe Birthday Boy. No, it's actually an on this day. You thought I forgot about this series after 2 days off. Nope, I didn't. It's September 18th, 1994. The big miniseries called Baseball was first broadcast on PBS and became a gigantic move for Ken Burns, and even won a Primetime Emmy Award for informational series. So just days after the 94 baseball season was officially stricken down because of the owners and players fighting over stuff, Baseball debuted. Ken Burns, this was his ninth documentary. He he had many documentaries, such as the Civil War, using archived pictures and film footage mixed with interviews for visual presentation. And the actors would provide voiceover reciting written work over pictures and videos. In fact, episodes were interspersed with the music of the times taken from the series' original music or even recordings. John Chancellor, who was part of the NBC Nightly News in the 70s, became the narrator of the series. They made the documentary into 9 parts, referred to as an inning. It was 9 eras in baseball, mentioning notable moments in the world, but also baseball, of course. There would be a prologue, and then the Star Spangled Banner would begin and all that. Based off of a few things. So, anyway, there were a lot of highlights and all that. September 18th was the first inning, the first 2 hours. The inning serves as an introduction to the game in the series and covers baseball's origins and the game as it evolved prior to the 20th century, to which professional leagues made the game grow in popularity and notoriety. And then the next day, on September 19th, the second inning was something like a war. It covered the 1900s and included the AL formation and integrating with the NL to make the World Series. It also talked about Christy Mathewson and Honus Wagner, among others, being the stars of the 1900s, who helped baseball's reputation from a rowdy, brawling game to a clean-cut game. Ty Cobb is discussed in depth, but that's when Ty Cobb kind of started his things and all that. And then on September 20th, the third inning, called The Faith of 50 Million People. It covers the 1910s and its greatest era of popularity. It also talked about the Black Sox scandal, of course, being at the end of the 1910s and prominently putting the game, the faith, in all of this. And then September 21st was the fourth inning from 1920 to 1930, called A National Heirloom. Baseball would have to recover from the Black Sox scandal, and because of the baseball becoming juiced in a sense, home runs were being hit, and the fans wanted to catch a home run ball. Babe Ruth would be called the savior and all of that. Anyway. The 1920s were huge to try to get back to the Black Sox scandal. The fifth inning was named Shadow Ball. It was the 1930s because of the Great Depression. Babe Ruth declining heavily. However, Bob Feller, Hank Greenberg, and Joe DiMaggio would be heroes of the 30s. And they also talk about the Negro Leagues because they were big popularity and all that. The sixth inning was called the National Pastime in the 1940s. Emphasis about baseball becoming the national pastime, and that African Americans would be coming into baseball for good, led by Jackie Robinson and also talked about World War II and having some of their stars leave for World War II, like Bob Feller and Hank Greenberg, and then coming back to baseball. And baseball was a symbol. And then the seventh inning was nicknamed the capital of baseball. Talking about the 1950s. How, the three New York-based teams, the Yankees, the Giants, and the Dodgers, were all big, and that the World Series seemed to always run through the city of New York, whether it be from the New York Yankees, the New York Giants, or the Brooklyn Dodgers. It was a golden era. And moving up to the suburbs caused baseball to follow. And all that. Meaning, of course, franchise moves. Because St. Louis moved to Baltimore. The St. Louis Browns moved to Baltimore. Brooklyn moved to Los Angeles. And, of course, the New York Giants moved to San Francisco. The eighth inning was called A Whole New Ball Game. Covering from 1960 to 1970. The nation went through turbulent changes. Baseball was not immune to it. Babe Ruth's home run record would be broken by Roger Maris, who they called sullen and complicated because he didn't want to give interviews to the press, and that everyone wanted Mickey Mantle to do that. And then pitchers would finally dominate, with Koufax and Gibson being heroes and all that. The home run power would be lost, and the meteoric rise of football would lead many to turn their back on baseball. And they would talk about the expansion, because 1961 was the first time that baseball expanded since the Major League, the American League and National League both started in 1901. Because 1961 saw the Angels and Senators movement, LA and Washington. Well, Washington lost their team to Minnesota and then gained another team, an expansion team, and Los Angeles got an American League team. Of course, 62, the Mets and Astros would come in for New York and Houston. New York finally getting a National League team back after the Dodgers and Giants moved to California. And in 1969, the great expansion with 4 teams, 2 in each league, come in. And then the ninth inning was talked about from 1970 to 1992. There'd be more bitter conflicts. The Players Union would form, owners colluding in the 1980s, free agency, drugs, gambling, and scandals. But baseball had some excitement in the 1975 World Series. Anyway, it was big. The documentary ends with an ironic boast that baseball had survived wars, depressions, pandemics, and scandals, but couldn't be stopped. Then the 94 strike happened and ended. In 2010, they actually did a follow-up, the 10th inning, which had stories from 92 to 2010, talking about the later stories of the 90s, the home run record being pursued by McGuire and Sosa in 98, baseball and steroids and all that. Also, they talked about the steroid scandal, 9/11, and how baseball played in that, and how the game is as popular as ever been, even though that they have an economic crisis. Lots of people were interviewed. All that. Arthur Ashe was interviewed. Mario Cuomo, Billy Crystal, Stephen Jay Gould, Tom Verducci, Keith Olbermann, and then lots of baseball guys. So yeah, it was huge. 18.5 hours of documentary stuff. The series was praised, but the length and detail was criticized and all that. But it didn't do as bad as it was and all that. So yeah. Yeah. So baseball as a documentary was huge. This got Ken Burns to the stratosphere and made everyone realize how good baseball really was. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.